Wellbeing as a sort of program of work in primary care for the next 12 months. So that ends in September. And where I came from was Health Education England, and that was working as in the professional support and wellbeing service. And really that was about supporting junior doctors across the Southwest region for a number of different, a range of different challenges and situations that they might be encountering, and using coaching support and positive psychology to really support those individuals in those various situations. So thank you, Vicky, for inviting me along for this session with you all, and thanks for coming along to join the session. What I'll do is I'll sort of take you through what we're hoping to cover in today's session. So hopefully you can all see the slides and you can see them changing. Do let me know if that's not the case, and we can see what we can do. So we'll be looking at techniques on maintaining well-being, and that's mainly based on the positive psychology literature and some coaching literature as well as some psychology literature around which would maybe be used in the clinical psychology realm by clinical psychologists. And we're going to think about what that means for you. So, you know, really get you involved in this session, and the chat function would probably be what we'll mainly use here, but please, if you feel open for sharing things, please do. You know, we'll make this as interactive as we can, and we'll also look at what are the available support resources for you in your role, and how you can access those. So I think just the first thing in any of these types of sessions when I run them is just, you know, this is an opportunity for you to share with each other, maybe some experiences, and maybe ask questions. And it's just that we want to make this a caring and compassionate space, and, you know, that we keep it confidential. We don't share beyond this space what we're sort of discussing and sharing in this session. Now, I know it's been recorded, Vicky, so it might be that people will want to put in the chat what they want to share here if you don't want it in the recording going out. But if you're comfortable sharing, knowing that it's being recorded, that is also fine as well. And just for everybody else, just that we take care and compassion when people are sharing those stories. And also as well, just going back to that, if anything triggers you in this session, which it can happen, you know, that it's very important to be aware that we're emotional beings, we are not robots. So if anything in this session does trigger you, please reach out afterwards, and we'll to either Vicky or I, and we can see how we can signpost you to relevant support. So don't experience that by yourself. Do reach out and talk to either of us if that has happened, and take care of yourself and take the space you need to recover if that is the case. So just to get us started, I like to ask this question. So a bit like resilience, well-being is kind of maybe becoming a bit of a tokenistic word. So I'd be interested in you sharing your experience of this concept of well-being as an individual. So please feel free to type in the chat bar, or if you want to unmute and share your experiences in that realm, what it means, you know, anything really, that would be great. So I'll just give you some moments to contribute. So I'm just seeing there's no typing going on in the chat. Anyone want to sort of type any just thoughts they have around the concept of well-being even? It doesn't have to be a personal experience. It could just be what you think about that word. Thank you, Vicky. You've put in the chat there, having a good mix of work and home life. That's what sort of well-being represents for you. Lovely. So that sort of balance, taking time out for yourself, Heather. Lovely. Thank you for sharing. And we've got somebody saying positive energy. Lovely, lovely. Balance in life, feeling well, both mentally and physically. So balance is coming up. Energy, doing things that give you joy. Lovely. This is some absolutely lovely suggestions. Happy. Love that. So some lovely contributions there. And what I love about these is that they're tapping into the real human side of us. So it's less about the sort of mechanics around well-being and processes, but more about the human experience of that. We've got being comfortable is a great word, isn't it? So thank you for those contributions. And so some of what you've already brought up there in terms of your experience or perception or feeling of well-being will come up, and we'll tap into those during this session. So it's really good to see where you're at with that. And I just wanted to share this, and this is a big thing that we sort of wanted to promote in my time within the professional support and well-being service, which was that, I think within society in general, there is this wellness concept, and there is a bit of a sort of unintended consequence of this industry that a lot of people feel like they can't be not okay, and that they have to be experiencing positive things all of the time. Things have to be going well all of the time. We have to be well all of the time. And this isn't actually the human experience. So life is an up and down experience. We get thrown curveballs. We'll feel up and down just naturally. And also, the experience of stress is a normal part of human life, and is useful because it spurs us into action. It only becomes an issue when that stress reaches a sort of pivotal point where you sort of go over that stress curve, as we like to call it, and it becomes distress. Um, so it was just to remind you that it's okay to feel up and down. It's not a weakness or a reflection that you can't do your job. It's rather a normal response to what can be abnormal situations. We are in a cost of living crisis. We do have those societal challenges going on, and recognizing that and sort of cutting ourselves some slack and realizing actually there's not an error with me here, there's not a flaw with me, this is normal, can often be a really helpful step to take, when we think about looking after ourselves. So there are loads and loads of models of well-being and what it means to be well within all of the literature around psychology, counseling, coaching. And what we're going to do is we're going to condense them down into sort of 5 tips today, and we're going to talk through those and get your thoughts on those as we go. So the first thing that we really like to promote in these areas is thinking about the basics. Now, this word basics I have an issue with because it's actually the essentials. It's what we really need for things to be built upon and to thrive from. So it derives from Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is a very old psychological model from the 1950s, but still very relevant now. And the basic concept of that was that we need to be taking care of the kind of fundamentals, foundation stones within our lives, such as getting enough sleep, getting enough nutrition and hydration, having clothes to wear, and having a place to live. So, really sort of fundamental basic needs. And if we get those right, actually, we can build upon that and really start to look at that, security, belonging, the importance of the job we're doing, how valuable that is, and that self-actualization, which is really where we feel we're growing as a person. So this is a lovely image here that was developed by soniasparkles.com for nurses, actually, to think about these basic needs as a bit of a checklist. So if we look at this bottom blue panel, the survival panel, and those essential basic needs, they've sort of been condensed into more practical actions. So taking those lunch and tea breaks, keeping hydrated throughout the day, keeping warm or cool, depending on the situation, having access to restrooms, and having balanced working hours. So over to you again, and please use the chat or unmute if you like, but please use the chat to sort of reflect on this for you, and sort of think about, how are these looking for you? And you could put sleep in there as well. Are you getting enough sleep? What does that look like? And just sort of take a moment to reflect for yourself on how am I taking care of those basic needs, and is anything flagging up that might need a bit of attention? So I can give you some moments to contribute, and I'll read them out as we go. Not include the names. So often working through lunch breaks. Yes, thank you. We hear this so much. And it's amazing how breaks, taking a break, which is a human need, it helps us with our cognitive functioning. It helps us deal with elevated stress levels and bringing those down. So it is a sort of soothing activity. It helps get hydrated and nourished, but it's often completely deprioritized in our lives for a lot of us. I'm guilty of it. I've definitely worked through lunch breaks when I shouldn't have, or worked too long. So it's not a flaw if you're doing this, but what this is trying to do is to bring it into your awareness more, where you might want to think about in the coming weeks, making little tweaks. So we've got another contribution here in the chat saying, oh, forgetting to drink, eat, or pop to the loo when busy. Yeah, absolutely. So the restroom breaks in secondary care settings is huge. People aren't accessing those breaks, but and sort of pushing themselves to the limit. So it seems in primary care that is also coming up. So amazing, isn't it? When you sort of sit back and reflect about how we just assume that that's something that we all tend to, but actually, are we? And this would suggest perhaps we're not. Another contribution here says, I feel it's taken me a while to get there, but I can say I now tick all these survival boxes. Used to sit at my desk and work late a lot of the time. Oh, fantastic. So a lovely example of somebody who has almost been through this process of going, oof, I have not taken care of these. I need to now give it some attention. And it's now working for you. So thank you for that. Often people will reflect on these when they've hit a point of burnout, a sort of crisis point. And so I would encourage you to not wait until a crisis point, but think about this in a proactive and preventative way, and think, how can I do this more? All of the evidence base suggests if you take care of these, you will mitigate against the stresses that your role involves, and you will help yourself in those types of scenarios. Never leaving work on time, not enough natural light in rooms or fresh air circulation. Yes, I mean, that fresh, cool air, we're sort of suffering, aren't we, at the minute with that? And yes, it's definitely a challenge in these summer months. And working beyond our hours. So I had a really interesting discussion with a group I've been working with around, how we can mark the end of the working day more for people. So how we can help people leave work in a positive way. So say, and actually make that a defining break point between work and home life. So I know examples of where people have agreed with their line manager that they'll go and speak to them before they leave work to have a I am finishing work chat, so that they can very, very sort of clearly set that boundary and go, I'm now going to be in my home life now. And that was working well for them. So lovely. Thank you for those examples. So really just take that time to think about those basic needs. Sleep is definitely a big one here. It's not mentioned as much in this model, but I think it's referenced here. Yes. So there's lots of studies to show that not getting enough sleep can affect your reaction times, your cognitive functioning to the same amount as if you've had an alcoholic beverage. So, and I think there's been in the news recently the suggestion that they're going to be doing blood tests on people to measure their levels of fatigue as a sort of test on the road, because there is such overwhelming evidence that this is a big issue for us being able to function properly in our roles. Obviously, sleep is very difficult in hot conditions, but I would encourage you to also think about your sort of sleep hygiene in the run up to preparing for sleep, and think about, is your phone next to your bed? Because that can be a huge distraction from people. So I know in coaching sessions, people who have charged their phone in a separate room, so that it's not in the space. They've invested in a nice alarm clock that's a sunrise lamp and plays a nice tune, rather than starting the day with a really harsh sound and having to put on a really bright light all of a sudden. So really think about how you can make the preparation for sleep and the preparation for waking up a nice experience, and just sort of little tweaks that might be possible there. Also, there's research there. This is from NHS employers from a couple of years ago, about the sort of taking breaks, the use of facilities, and the importance of hydration and nutrition. So a lovely graphic there. And these slides will be shared with you after the session, so you can take a look. So the second consideration is that taking time to notice. I think we're in a very busy world. We have very busy jobs. And in a way, our society values busyness. So, how many conversations have we had with our friends who were like, oh, I've been flat out, and they'll go, yes, it's just been manic. And it's almost like a badge of honor for us to sort of be able to say that, look at what a hard worker I am. And we all are hard workers. But we need to also give equal value to taking moments when we're not doing anything, when we're just pausing to take a moment to tune in and to literally find out how we're feeling in ourselves, physically in our bodies, mentally in our minds. Where are we at? It can be scary to do that, especially if we're holding a lot. So that can feel quite overwhelming for some people. And when I present this, especially the physical sort of tuning in, I realize I've got my legs crossed. I'm sitting at a really awkward angle. My back doesn't feel straight. And I wouldn't have noticed that if I hadn't have taken the moment just to do a quick scan of how my body is feeling. And maybe you'll notice it now as you're sitting there, feeling the contact with the chair. Are my feet on the ground? How is my back feeling? Maybe I need to take a bit of a stretch. Do that. Take that moment to do that. This is a skill, and it doesn't happen overnight. So it's something that you may need to sort of train your brain to do and to prioritize, because we don't often get told to do it. And you might want to do it with maybe people you work with. How are you feeling physically right now? How are you feeling mentally? Just take a moment, take a breather, take some deep breath. So ask yourself, how am I doing? And the other thing that this really helps with is to take the opportunity to notice what's going well. So a really interesting fact about humans, and it's been backed up by research, is that we are very, very, very good at recalling and remembering negative events. So I'm sure you all will be able to recall something awful that's happened in the past week, or a really challenging day that you had, or an event that took place. And it's thought that that is a normal evolutionary function of humans. If you think about how we've evolved, we need to remember to avoid a certain place in our landscape because it might have a dangerous animal there. We might need to remember to avoid interacting with that certain group of people because there was a risk to our tribe. We're talking about very much back in our evolutionary days. Don't eat that berry, it will make you terribly ill, those sorts of things. So it was a very basic function, but it helped us to survive. Nowadays, what happens is we recall all of the things that have happened across the day, usually with that angle. What's the risk here? What might cause me harm? And so we're recalling all of those negative events and things that have happened. To recall and notice what's going well is not in our programming. And so we need to sort of set up new neural pathways in our brains, for example, and this can be done. So research on Buddhist monks who've meditated show that over 6 months, their brain structure and their pathways physically change. So this is about thinking about retraining our brains. And a very simple way of doing that can be before you leave work, think about the 3 things that have gone well today. There will undoubtedly have been challenges, but just take a moment to think about, well, what 3 things went well? And if you want to enhance it even more, think about your contribution in those 3 things. So, what 3 things went well because of me, because of something I did? That's even more of a step for a lot of people. But I challenge you to do that for yourself. And you can journal that, you can write them down, and take note of that even before bed. It can be a nice process. And that's quite nice writing it down, because if you're having a really rubbish day, which we all do, you can look back at that and just remind yourself of the things that have gone well previously, just to sort of reset the balance a bit. So though that attentional spotlight, what you choose to pay your attention to, is hugely important, and takes training and practice. Anybody want to give it a try? Maybe over the last day or so, share something that went well because of something you were involved in, something you did, just so that we can get a feel for what that feels like on this chat. And please do, if you want to share it in the chat box, that would be wonderful, because it will help everyone experience it together, and it is really lovely. Also, does anybody do this? I'm interested, because for people who do this, it's interesting to hear how they find it. So while we're waiting, I'll share one from me. My thing that went well this morning was I remembered to give each of my daughters money for a mini market that year 6 are holding to raise funds. For me to remember that is an achievement, because I often forget. So they were very happy. I was very pleased. That went well. We can be in and outside of work. So I'm going to just read some of these out. I spoke to a patient who was fairly standoffish at the start of our conversation, but by the end we were having a laugh and a joke, and they wanted to engage and support. This was a huge win for me. Oh, what an absolutely lovely example. And how lovely is that to know that you've been on that journey with that individual who initially was just probably arms crossed, barriers up. And through your skill and expertise, you were able to get them to that point where they're obviously more relaxed and trusting of you. Lovely example. So remember those moments. They will help you, and they will help you tune into the value of what you're doing in your job and in home life as well. This is a lovely activity to do with children informally at the dinner table. You know, what 3 things have gone well today? It's hilarious what they bring up. So have a go and see if that's. Thank you for sharing that. And if any more come through, I'll read them. Please do, if people are still typing, please share them, by the way. I'm just moving on for the sake of time, but I will read them out. So if you're still typing, please do send that message in the chat. So the third consideration then, and these are often overlapping, these considerations, but the third one is, oh, I'm just going to pause because somebody's put in the chat. I used to keep a gratitude journal and found it useful. Unfortunately, I did stop after a few months, but would like to start again. There is a lovely gratitude journal that you can buy. I'll see if I can find it. Lovely. So yes, there are loads of template journals out there. And I would say, just find what works for you, and don't put yourself under too much pressure to do it rigidly all the time. And if you miss a day, that means you have to stop forever. Go easy on yourself with this. This is just a bit of self-care exercise. So don't make it a harsh exercise for yourself. It can be really useful. And if you want to think about this as a proactive task, you could print out posters and put them up in your work. Maybe there's a door that everyone has to walk through when they leave the building. You could put something on there to remind people to take a moment to notice the three things that went well. They do it in ED departments. I've known them to do that. Um, so that could be a really nice thing that, to do for you and your staff in the workplace as a sort of visual prompt there. So, thank you. I love when people contribute in these chats. It brings it all, it really brings it all to life. And somebody else has said, I use a gratitude app on my phone, which I find I use more. I started in January writing every day, but now I do a few minutes a week, so less pressure. Lovely. So that's exactly what I was saying. Do what works for you. It doesn't have to be a rigid thing every day. And apps can be a great tool because we do often have our phones on us, don't we? So it's probably more likely we would engage with that perhaps. So yes, loads of different options here. I find even just running through it in my mind can help. Just reminding myself, today was tough, but what three things went well? So the importance of recharge. Now, there are loads of ways we could highlight and visualize this, but I really like this stress bucket template. And there is a link to a PDF of this, so you can complete this template yourself and use it as a bit of a tool. But the concept of this generally is that we have a lot of stuff happening in our lives, a lot of pressures, a lot of things going on. And you can see here the examples on this illustration saying, it might be issues in the job. It might be the stress of the job. The caring profession does have more of that in it. And I'm going to talk about that more in a moment. It might be family relationship stress. It might be lack of sleep or health worries. It could be a combination of things going on there. And if we let those all happen to us, which they do, then our sort of stress bucket will fill up and fill up and fill up. And we'll hit trigger points where all of a sudden we're not relaxed. All of a sudden we're feeling a bit more tense and stressed. We might be a bit short with people, which makes us feel even worse. And then kind of it keeps building up and up. So we need to think about how we can relieve the pressure a bit. So that's the drainage holes at the bottom. And what those might be for you will be different depending on the person. So there's no easy formula here. But generally, it's things that help to recharge you. It's things where you feel better after you've done it, where you feel a sense of time passing quickly is a good indication of a recharge activity. So, it's sort of, wow, we spent an hour on that. It felt like 10 minutes because you were so absorbed in the activity. It might be that you just feel better having talked to somebody, or you've experienced a bit of joy having done that activity. So somebody mentioned joy at the beginning in their talk about well-being. The experience of joy is something we should seek, and we should prioritize. So what is that for you? It will be different for everyone, and it doesn't have to be a big extravagant thing. So answers on a postcard in the chat. Let's share what those recharge activities are for you. So for me, it's reading a book. If my husband knows if I'm not reading a book, something's up and I need to start reading again. It's definitely my way of sort of zoning out from all of what's going on in the world and going into a different world. It might be listening to music. It might be going for a walk, a bike ride. It might be chatting to friends. Somebody wrote spending time in my flotation tank on one of these chats before, which was, I'd never heard of that before. So it literally can be anything. But so lovely, people are starting to share. So going for a short walk, yes, walking the dog, yeah, running and swimming, also walking my dog in the evenings, walking my labs. Oh, we all need a dog by the sounds of it. Lovely. So like these aren't big, expensive, extravagant things, are they? Well, dogs can be expensive, but you don't have to be, going on wellness retreats or things like that. They're often very accessible activities. So getting outside, exercise, reading, listening to music, spending time with friends, baking, yes. So for some people, baking is just such a relaxing activity. For me, it's not. But, and that again goes to show there is no prescriptive way of handling this. Everyone will have their different needs and recharge activities. Walking by a nearby river and yoga, lovely, lovely. So it's taking that time, isn't it? If you work from home at times, I don't know if some of you do, but perhaps that is a feature sometimes, working from home. Can you go for a quick walk around the block to mark the start and the end of the day? Simple little things. Even if you are in an office, can you go for a quick walk halfway through the day, just to give that time and space to just be with you? Being in my garden, yes, well, there's so much research coming out about the benefits of walking in nature, the benefits of gardening, just that access to those green spaces. So lovely. Fantastic. So as you can see, it will vary by person. So I really don't like when you see people come along and go, right, everybody, let's do a yoga session. It's going to cure everything. It's just not the reality. And so what I would encourage you to do is tune into identify what they are for you. Maybe write them down on some post-its, have them visible for a while until you get used to them. And make sure, ask yourself, am I building this time into my life? Am I prioritizing it? Is it there? Now, some people I've coached have had to physically get out a calendar and look at where they can build in this time. If that's what it takes, do that because it will make a difference. This will help you with that stress bucket not overflowing and becoming overwhelming. So lovely. That's great. And leading on from that is a really important concept, which my work in this health and wellbeing program over the past 8 months has really highlighted. We did a survey of 515 staff within primary care over the springtime with a sample group of organisations, mainly general practices, and we found that there seemed to be a theme emerging which links to the concept of moral distress from the responses that we were getting, which from a psychological point of view is super interesting. And we've had a clinical psychologist involved in looking at this as well. So moral distress is a feeling of unease from situations where the it says institutionally required behavior, but the system does not align with your moral principles. So examples that we had of this were, for example, literally qualitative feedback saying, I'm not able to give patients the appointments they need in the time that they want. That you go into healthcare to help people. We all go into healthcare to help people. But when you're in a system which doesn't allow you to help them to the extent that you morally want to, that can cause distress. And that was really what we were seeing. For clinicians, it was 10 minutes isn't enough. These patients need more time. They're complex. And I want to give them more time. They need more time. Morally, I want to give them that. So this is what we're hearing in the system. And this might resonate with a lot of you. This feeling of wanting to give more, but the system is constraining it and trying to push more and more from you. So that sort of demand to do more work with less people in a constrained system, when you just want to help people, can cause distress. So moral distress is a psychologically known concept. It can happen. It can happen in particular in these roles. So what can you do about it? Well, a bit of what we talked about already can really, really help. That stress bucket, remember that. This concept of moral distress will fill up that stress bucket. It will be a key part, pumping the water in there. So it's even more important to think about, that self-care. How can I look after myself, given I'm in this type of job, which exposes me to these elements of distress? What can I do? And so that self-care, prioritizing it, recognizing it, what works for you, and really building it in is crucially important for managing this. Um, Developing support networks, talking to your colleagues. Maybe you could have a section in a team meeting where you go, let's talk about this, you know, how are people feeling? And be honest and open as much as you want and are comfortable doing, by the way. But that can be really useful, and peer support networks can be incredibly useful. And seeking support if you need to go beyond just speaking to a friend, incredibly important, incredibly proactive and strong to do that. So it's a really important point. I was going to ask this, so I was going to ask if it resonates, and maybe people want to sort of share now for sort of a couple of minutes on what are your thoughts on this, and maybe, you know, do you have an example of when you've experienced this, just so that we can all get a sense that we're not alone in this experience. So we've got some people starting, thank you, saying pressures of tick boxes over personalized care. Yes. It's incredible, isn't it, the way we're in a system where care is what the end outcome should be, you know, that personalized care. But in such a sort of trimmed down system of cuts and do more for less, it's almost like a very big contradiction in and of itself. So we've got another contribution saying, I had a couple of documents containing very distressing information. I didn't know how to not take that knowledge home with me. I had spoken to my practice manager who referred me to an NHS support network. Lovely example of recognizing, you know, and seeking that extra help. It's such a brave, important, and strong step to take as a person. So well done for doing that. You know, speaking up, not suffering alone in that. Hugely, hugely important. I can relate to the lack of agency from a previous role where a line manager did not give staff the flexibility or autonomy to make their own decisions. Yeah. So flexibility and autonomy are the key words there. Loads of research to suggest that, and the King's Fund produced a paper on it, suggesting that people need three things in order to feel sort of satisfied in their work. They need to, it's the ABC. They need to feel a sense of autonomy, a sense of belonging, and a sense of competence. So a sense that what they're doing is making things better. So, you know, autonomy wasn't there for you. So that's a key sort of need that wasn't being served. And flexibility nationally in the NHS is an agenda. It links into autonomy, and it helps us with our work-life balance and being able to recognize we're all humans with other lives other than work. Lovely. Thank you for those examples. So it's a big topic, and Sadie Thomas Unsworth, who is the clinical psychologist working with the Healthier Together support network, she was the clinical lead for that network that does not future funding, and so the one-to-one support had to be stopped. But we're looking at how we can roll out a moral distress program for primary care staff in BNSSG, and that's in progress. We're working on that. And one of the sort of relating to a lot of what we talked about, but one of the things that she talks about from the psychology literature is this Gilbert's evolutionary model process. That now this might seem very complex, but essentially we tend to spend a lot of our time in the threat system and in the drive system. So the threat system is that, oh my God, there's a danger. I need to escape it. I need to do something. Our amygdala is triggered. We're going to have a lot of adrenaline and cortisol flowing through our body. And we're going to try and deal with what's in front of us. Now, when we're under extreme pressure and stress from situations, our threat system is triggered. And there have been studies to show that our actual vision narrows because, if you think about it, you need to fight something in front of you, a lion or a tiger back in the day. To do that, to narrow your vision and just focus on that threat was incredibly helpful. But nowadays, what that does is it means you can't think wider beyond that situation. You can't think, hold on a minute, what's going to help me here? And so that threat system, once it's triggered, can be debilitating, actually. But it triggers a lot for us. The drive system is a very motivating system. We want to achieve things, move towards things, progress, stay focused, and that, achieving things at work, working towards a PDP, working towards a qualification, all of those things, are our drive systems. And a lot of our works wants us to stay in that system. What we don't pay a lot of attention to is the soothing system. So that system that we've talked about before with the stress bucket and with the tuning in, when are you taking the time to bond with people, to feel content and safe and cared for, and those really soothing emotions. And the color green isn't accidental here. It literally helps us to manage those threat and drive systems with all of those, dopamine and adrenaline and cortisol going through. It gets the oxytocin going, and it gets that feel good parasympathetic system connected to just ease things down, help us cope. So think about engaging with your soothing system through those recharge activities, through that taking time to tune in, through those noticing the 3 good things that have happened. Those will all help with that engaging time. So the last thing I'm going to go through, and this is a model from a GP who left general practice and went into the world of looking after people in a wellness capacity rather than the capacity that they had been. Came up with this concept of psychological PPE. So how can we prep ourselves to be able to deal with difficult situations better when they happen? So for most of us, when a difficult situation happens, we go into drive or threat mode. We put all of our resources into it and we somehow get through it. And we go, oh my God, that was tough. I hope I don't have to deal with that again. And it's just kind of water under the bridge. Let's move on. What he suggests is that we take a moment to pause again and think about, hang on a minute, I just got through an incredibly difficult situation. And if I encounter a future difficult situation, what was it that got me through this situation that could help me in future? So he suggested this SSRI model, which we know as a group of antidepressant medication. And being a GP, he did this deliberately to sort of help people within primary care remember it. But he says, okay, you've got through a difficult situation. What were the strengths that got you through? What were the personal strengths you have as an individual that helped you through that situation? We don't think like this normally. We don't take the time to think like this. So you've had a difficult situation. What were those strengths and inner resources that you drew upon that got you through? What strategies did you use that helped? Was it a particular approach? Did you do a particular activity? What were those strategies that you had in place? It could be, if I didn't go for that walk every day, I don't know how I would have got through that situation. If I didn't speak to that person, actually speaking to a person is the next one. Resources. What resources did you go out and access that helped you through? So did you reach out to a particular organization or a person? The example given in the chat about speaking to your manager and then accessing an NHS support network. Lovely example of accessing resources that helped in that situation. So what were they? Bring them to your awareness and write it down. And what were the key insights you learned from that experience? It could be a philosophical quote. It could be a helpful phrase. It could be just something that kind of resonates with you, a certain perspective that you took to get you through. What were those particular learning points? So this can be actually work through in a written format after you've gone through a challenging situation, and just write it down and reflect on it and look at it again in the future. And that will help you recognize those strengths, strategies, and resources that you can use again to get through future challenges. So it's using a growth mindset. It's helping you grow from adversity rather than just kind of move on and hope it doesn't happen again, which it's just very natural to feel that way. So any thoughts or questions about any of those 5 considerations before we go on to this? Any sort of things that have occurred for you going through those, or anything really? Share any observations or thoughts. Yeah, we can use the chat bar because I think you'll find that more comfortable. Okay, well, I'll leave some space for that to come through while I go through this next section. So this is on, so there will be moments in all of our lives, multiple moments throughout our lives, when we do need to access support. And it's really important that we do that in order to look after ourselves and to be able to do the jobs that we do. And it's okay, it's normal, it's a sign of strength when you do reach out for support. So one of the sort of big things about support and thinking about this concept is that resilience isn't just about our own personal resilience, but it often lies between people. So your team and the people around you are a huge source of support. And building a team that works in that way to encourage the resilience of its members is hugely important. And Professor Michael West, who's an occupational psychologist, a work psychologist, did loads of research in this area on teamwork and compassionate leadership. And he found that these were the elements that needed to be in place in order for that resilience to be within the team. So having a compassionate climate, having a clear sense of purpose and objectives, having regular feedback and clarity around what you're supposed to be doing, minimizing that hierarchy so everyone feels they can contribute, regularly planning and reviewing how things are going, and thinking about those team competencies. So they're all very practical things you can think of, but that it really helps to build that trust in a team and can really help with that support mechanism that's around you. So I just wanted to highlight that as a really important element of your own support, source of support and resilience. So this is a useful slide, a summary slide, and you could maybe print it out somewhere and have it, put it on a desktop background. But I sort of think there's different levels of support. And the first thing I would say is speak to somebody you trust. It could be somebody outside of work, but it could be your line manager, it could be a supervisor, it could be a mental health first aider within your primary care network or your surgery, or one of the mental health nurses. But there are people you can speak to, but it's important that you feel you can trust them. So, go with your instinct on that, on who you feel you can trust, and just have an initial conversation. It may be that that's enough. It may be that actually you need more support, and that's okay. But that's a really useful first step, is opening up and reaching out, a bit like the example that was given in the chat. The other thing you can do is access free training. So the local medical committee have a Finding Calm Amongst the Chaos course, and they often have things coming up to access. The Prep Training Hub obviously is running things, but the more sort of awareness you have and education and awareness around different areas, the more empowered you are actually to be able to do things that will proactively help you. There is free coaching for every member of the primary care team through NHS England, and I've linked to it there, and through the BNSSG Supercharging Coaching Network. So coaching, if anybody, I don't, has anybody accessed it on here? And maybe you could share your experience of coaching if you have, that would be wonderful. But essentially, a coach will help you to think about, well, what is it that's challenging at the moment, but where are you now and where do you want to get to? That's the crucial bit. So as long as you're not unwell, a coach can help you to bring a bit of clarity around where you want to get to. Might be in your job, it might be at home, and it can be a really structured, positive conversation that helps get you into action in a proactive and positive way. If you are unwell, though, then coaching is probably not appropriate. If you're feeling consistently low in mood, and if you're experiencing those clinical symptoms, which you're probably very aware of in your roles, actually, from helping patients, you don't ignore them in yourself and do reach out for that support. So you've got Vita Health as a talking therapy service within BNSSG. Practitioner Health is a national service run by GPs and psychiatrists, and primary care staff can access that for free. And the Samaritans, as well as a confidential text support service from the NHS. So, they're really, and speak to your own GP. Don't forget that you can be a patient, you can access care. You're not some superhuman other person who that doesn't apply to. So really important to remember those. So I'm open to questions, thoughts, comments at this point. And if you can, scan this QR code and just take a moment to give us some feedback about today's session. That would be wonderful. But I'm open for any thoughts, comments, questions from anyone. So please, put them in the chat and I'll do my best to answer any that come through.
Elsha, thank you very much. That's been a very informative presentation on health and wellbeing. Everyone's free to go if you haven't got any further questions. And there will be some more training coming up on cancer care in another month. But if you have any questions, come back to me. I'll put the presentation on the Care Coordinators Forum, and Jeannie will upload it onto the Social Prescribing Forum. But if you have any questions, come back to us. Thank you very much for listening.
Thanks, everyone. And just there's been some sharing of experience with accessing coaching in the chat, which people have said it was extremely helpful for them. So thank you for sharing that. Take care, everyone.
Tasha, are you happy for me to put, it would just be the recording of the presentation and your voiceover without the chat comments?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. I think we're able to maintain anonymity enough for that to be absolutely fine.
That was really good. I thought that was really thought-provoking, and although obviously more people were online, 4 or 5 people were sitting with people, so the fact that we've reached across whoever's interested in this talk, and then the presentations will be on the forum, so it just gives everyone that opportunity to reach out even if they're not able to make Thursday morning. So it's really invaluable. Yes. So thank you. It's really, really great.
No worries. Thank you for having me along, and I'll send you the slides and the link for the evaluation if anybody can complete that.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Take care.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.